Friday Tech Talk. Thanks for everybody for showing up today. I really appreciate you coming. I hope you all had a great weekend. Today we're joined by Ronnda Zezula. She's a graduate. She graduated in July of this year. And she's got an awesome story she's going to tell us about how she landed a job based on an elevator pitch that she wrote for this small Portland company. She's going to tell you a little bit about how she wrote this pitch and help you to maybe develop your own pitch for a similar scenario you might find yourself in. So without any further ado, I'll let Ronnda take it away. If you have any questions, feel free to add them in the chat. We're going to have time at the end for questions. Yeah, go ahead and take it away, Ronnda.
All right, thank you. Hi, everybody. I hope you all had a great day yesterday, and thank you for joining this Tech Talk. My name is Ronnda Zezula, as Forrest said, and I graduated from Tech Academy's Python Developer Bootcamp in July. My background was in project management and technical support engineering for forensic data and electronic discovery software and services when I first started the bootcamp. And I was also and am still working on a degree in social and behavioral psychology. So this kind of fits into what I've been doing in my studies. So before we get too far along, I want to admit to all of you, I'm relying really heavily on notes. You'll surely notice me glancing at them, and I want to get this right for all of you. I don't want to wing it. Because of COVID, I haven't been speaking very often, so I'm a little bit nervous, and I'm not too sure what I'd miss if I didn't have my notes to follow. This was a little too much content for me to memorize. So speaking of notes, if all of you want to listen and you later just think, oh, what did she say about that one thing? You're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn or message me from ronnda.info, and I'll be happy to send you my cheat sheet. That way you don't have to worry about writing anything down that catches your ear while I'm talking. And I would like to also take a little bit of time and just ask each of you to introduce yourself. By giving us your name, and you don't have to give us your full name, just whatever you're comfortable, and tell us one skill that you're confident you could tell a story about right now off the cuff to an absolute stranger. And I promise I won't ask you to tell the story, but I am curious to see what you all come up with. So if there's any volunteers.
Let's see. Go for it.
I can go first. I'm Regina. And one skill I would say I'm really interested in photo editing, and I'd say I'm pretty good at that. So, yeah.
Excellent. Let's see here. Rob, you want to give it a shot?
Well, I'm probably the oldest student here. I'm 58. Just getting into coding now. I feel my best skill is being able to work as part of a team and to have eye for detail.
Excellent. Let's get a couple more in there. Go for it, Eldon.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Eldon. One skill I feel I am particularly good at would be in the music industry, sort of producing, mixing, and just, I guess, chorally.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Let's see who else. We got Linda's in here. And Linda, you want to introduce yourself? I'm not sure if your mic works, actually.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Hello?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I think one skill that I'm good at is probably, I don't know, like, I think I'm good at making up some stuff. Like, if I need to, like, improv something, I think I'm good at improving. I used to act in college, so I think I'm good at that.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else want to give it a shot?
You got one, Forrest?
Yeah, of course. So hi, everybody. I'm Forrest. Maybe you probably already know me. One thing that I'm particularly good at is, oh gosh, there's so many things. It's hard to come up with one. No, that's not true. I'm really, I cooked for 10 years. I'm a really excellent cook, I'd have to say. And I'm incredibly creative when it comes to, coming up with new ideas there.
Nice. It looks like Jason raised his hand.
Go for it, Jason.
Hi everyone, my name's Jason. I'm actually currently a Thinkful student. I'd say the skill that I have the most strength in would probably be soft skills related to customer service. I worked in an escalations department where you literally had to yell at me for multiple hours at a time. I think one was 7 hours long that I took. So that's probably my strength.
7 hours.
Ooh, that sounds rough.
And I'm Rick. I'm the student director, and I would say technology is really my thing. So I've got a lot of skills with that. I've got some coding skills, but I've also got networking and hardware skills. So that's definitely a good thing for me. I do like sports a lot too. So I played a lot of sports, and it's kind of my hobby.
Fun.
All right. Anybody want to jump in before we move on? Oh, we got Scott there at the bottom. Go for it, Scott.
Yeah, my name's Scott, and I would say one of my skills is probably gaming. Huge gamer, so pretty good at that. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. All right, Rhonda, maybe
Good.
take it away again. Go for it.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for taking part in that. I was mainly curious because I was wondering if it was hard for all of you to think of a skill on the spot, and was it terrifying for you when I asked you to do that? And then would it have been harder if I'd asked you to tell us about a time when you used that skill, or what challenges you faced, or what about the outcome, and why do you think that is? On a very small scale, you probably experienced a little bit of stress and fear when I put you on the spot in front of people you don't know. The norepinephrine and cortisol produced when you're stressed alters your memory, and it limits recall ability. So the activity in the parts of your brain like the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex decreases and inhibits your ability to access and accurately recall memories. So one way to combat this is by empowering yourself in advance with retrieval cues. These are stimuli that help you recall information and details more easily when under pressure. Basically, they're short stories about the skills and experience that you want to communicate to other people on demand. So before we dive into that a little bit more, I want to cop to a bias and some pretty mean behavior on my past. My work in the data forensics and electronic discovery industry required that I train sales engineers and attend client pitch meetings, demos, and industry trade shows with sales teams. And I grew to strongly dislike sales speak. It seemed pretty hollow, and the same words and phrases were repeated over and over in every interaction between sales and client or potential client. And the other technical staff disliked it too. So much that we crafted a game that we called BS Bingo. We used the words and phrases that we heard over and over again, like robust, arms around, reach out, embrace, touch bases, at the end of the day, and elevator pitch was one of those. The winner after each call of BS Bingo got a free beer after work. And so imagine my surprise when something that I made merciless fun of before benefited me personally. I decided that I owe some salespeople some sincere apologies for my elitist thinking back then. When I was poking fun at the elevator pitch with my teammates, I wasn't thinking about how crucial it is as a retrieval tool for our memories. The elevator pitch requires examining value deeply enough to summarize, recall, and speak to it in a short period of time to someone you don't know. Under pressure. The goal is to intrigue them enough to want to engage them in more conversation. They want to talk to you more once they get interested in who you are. So although I made fun of the term, I was pretty decent at giving an elevator speech when I was talking about anything other than myself. From my personal experience, talking about myself has always been incredibly difficult, and for many reasons. Two of those are perfectionism and imposter syndrome. So that leads me to the first rule of creating your personal elevator pitch. Avoid searching around on sites like Reddit while you're working on yours. I really mean that. There are super positive things that people post on sites like Reddit, but if you look hard enough, and nearly everybody does, you're going to find others who confirm the negative things you might think about yourself, and that's not motivational. So please just don't do it while you're working on your scripts. If you're like me, you're looking because you have a difficult time thinking about yourself in terms of value or accomplishments, and I get that. One thing that helped me avoid consulting Reddit is thinking about myself as a product. It detached me just a little bit. Thinking about myself as a product, I kept a running list, and each day I wrote on the left side one thing I could do well, and on the right side one thing I could work on doing better. And I also focused on work-related skills to keep me from going down rabbit holes. And I kept at that list until I had a full page. I used the left side, the do well side, for my personal elevator pitch, but the right side came in handy later. If you can't think of any left side things, ask the people who know you. Look at what you've learned and done at Tech Academy so far, or think about the reviews that you've had at work. There are things, I promise there are. You just need to be open to thinking about yourself. They don't have to be things you were paid to do either. Use anything that shows what you do well or could learn better. If it's something you learned at work, in school, in training, as a volunteer, or in your own home, it doesn't matter as long as you can talk about it in a way that shows you have that skill or you're working on it and why. And I'll get to that later. Next, I came up with elevator pitch scripts that told a story about each left side item, and I rehearsed them in my head using conversational situations I might reasonably find myself in. You won't be able to cover every possible conversation scenario, but you'll be comfortable telling your stories so you can adapt and recall more easily. With the pandemic, there are fewer situations to interact with strangers in, but it does happen. And the narrower the field of potential interactions, it might actually make it easier for you to script. Practicing out loud really helps with your ability to recall while still sounding natural, but I know it's not an easy thing to do. If you can do it, it pays off. If you can't, try whispering it to yourself while you're in the shower or when there's other noises happening around you and it feels a little bit less awkward that way. Practicing out loud, though, it helps your own stress level later. When you practice out loud, you hear your voice saying the words in your head, and your mind stores the memories of hearing yourself say those things. So the more you do it, the easier it'll be for you to recall the information as you're saying basically the same things. And practice also helps you if you feel uncomfortable talking to people you don't know. It's kind of a conversation cheat sheet. Another thing that helped me was to take the focus off myself by setting a goal to just learn more about other people and find a common connection with them that will benefit us both. It was less stressful for me when I thought I wasn't just talking to people with my hand out. And I have a few recommendations about creating your scripts. Remember that an elevator pitch is only meant to pique someone's interest and engage them in more conversations about you. It's brief, so avoid getting into the weeds with major details or highly technical words unless you're prepping for an interview, which we'll talk about later. You're creating scripts to help people want to learn more about you so you can help them want to continue a conversation with you that leaves them rooting for you and wanting to help you out. And I don't mean for your scripts to be something that you memorize and regurgitate word for word. People will smell mechanical insincerity and they'll be uncomfortable with the conversation. They won't want to continue it. So practicing your scripts will dial down your internal dialogue and help you recall core information so you'll feel comfortable talking to people about you in an authentic way that helps them connect to you. They're a little like pep talks for your subconscious. Also, just because you have the scripts down doesn't mean you should force them into every conversation if you feel uncomfortable for any reason or you perceive the other person is uncomfortable. Your discomfort could be palpable to the other person, and that would override everything that you say. Other quick rules on what not to do when talking to people. Unless someone specifically asks for names as examples, don't name drop. Studies show that it comes across as bragging and egotistical, and people don't like it. Also, studies have shown that people would rather work with someone they enjoy being around who isn't as skilled than someone who is a master but let everybody know about it. So don't be a know-it-all. And definitely avoid asking someone you just met for information that most people think of as personal, like relationship status, age, or nationality. This seems like a no-brainer right now while we're talking, but under pressure, it's really easy to default to asking questions like those just to fill voids in conversations. So when you ask people about themselves, also never say anything judgy about their responses or correct what they said unless it's something factually incorrect about you. And even then, only do it with kindness to avoid embarrassing them. If you absolutely can't resist responding to something you don't agree with, try saying, I've never thought about it that way before, or I've never heard that before. And you can ask them to tell you about how they discovered or learned or heard that. Just don't disconnect from the conversation by worrying about how impressive you sound, or listen only until you can inject a clever story or focus on winning in the conversation. Then you'll be okay. Your scripts will only have 4 parts because remember, they're just conversation starters. The first part is context. Describe one of your left side things that you do well and phrase it as a question so that they can respond from their own experience. The second is to listen to their response. It's how you're going to know whether there's a potentially helpful connection with this person or how to phrase the rest of your questions to get to that answer. The third is action. Use their response as a guide and briefly tell them how you could solve their problem or benefit them, or how what you do well solves problems and benefits other people generally. And the fourth is the result. Tell a story from your experience to illustrate how what you do well solved a problem or benefited someone, even if that someone is you. Then continue the conversation by asking them questions to learn more about them and determine if there's someone you could help, who could help you, or who might connect you to someone who can. I also recommend recording yourself saying your scripts and watching those recordings. I know, but this helps you watch for a few important issues. Do you speak slowly and clearly, or are you mumbling and barreling through your words? People lend more credibility to someone who speaks slowly and clearly, so practice doing that. Also, practice speaking with enthusiasm. No one likes an Eeyore, and if you don't know who Eeyore is, Google it later. Even if you're the least excited person on the planet right then, studies show that people who are enthusiastic when they speak are viewed as accessible, knowledgeable, authentic, and oriented. Watch for any nervous tics that come out in physical form so you can work on minimizing them. For example, my ears turn purple when I'm nervous or angry, and I didn't know that before I watched my own videos. People must have been way too polite to point it out in all the times that I've been in front of people or on video before. So I didn't know this until I watched myself on video, and I learned to wear my hair covering my ears when I know that I'll be doing something that's going to make me nervous or possibly angry. And I also tended to rock back and forth a bit. I think my nervous energy was trying to escape. So I had to work on recognizing the urge to do that and sitting still instead. Also, practice genuinely smiling. Even if you can't bring yourself to show your teeth, I really can't. You can smile with the corners of your mouth and with your eyes. Just look at yourself in the mirror when you do it. I tend to look grimacing and creepy when I force a wide smile, so I practice smiling more with my eyes. Practice keeping your chin level or pointed a little bit down so that people won't feel like you're looking down your nose at them. That's really a thing that people perceive without realizing it. And tilt your head a little bit, angle your body. Facing fully in front intimidates some people. Hold your palms toward the person or outward and relaxed, not in an awkward way, but just to keep you from putting them down on the tabletop or from in your lap, or even worse, clenching your hands. Those read as signs of lying or being evasive to other people. And use elevating facial expressions and body movements like raising your eyebrows, opening your eyes a little bit wider, and standing or sitting up a little bit taller. All of those things are proven to be comforting for the person that you're talking to. And also physically practice walking up to people casually or turning toward them if they're already standing near you and just smiling. People are 86% more likely to talk to somebody who's smiling. And then practice introduction sentences that help people feel more at ease. If you're in a setting where people are expected to talk to each other, it's appropriate to start with your name. You can say, "Hi, I'm Rhonda. I don't think we've met before." Although use your own name. When they introduce themselves, tell them that it's nice to meet them. It's really easy to forget to do that, but it's a social norm that people expect, and they'll think you're self-centered if you don't say that. People are less likely to engage in a conversation if they fear they might get trapped in it. So help them relax a little bit by saying things like, "I only have a few minutes, but I wanted to ask." Or, "If you have a minute, I'd appreciate your opinion." It kind of lets them know there's going to be an end to the conversation so they don't feel like they want to escape. And become good at watching body language. There are a ton of TED Talks on that topic. They're all really good. And as you're talking, if the other person looks uncomfortable or doesn't seem to be listening, politely change the subject or excuse yourself from the conversation. I promise that leaves a far better impression than pushing an unwanted conversation onto somebody. If you're in a place like a grocery store aisle, it'd be way too aggressive to start with your name. Instead, start with a compliment. I have to say, I love your scarf. Where did you find it? Or, your kids are so well behaved. I didn't wait that patiently in line when I was a kid. Whatever you compliment them on, just be real about it. Don't say somebody's kids are well behaved if they're screaming their heads off and the person looks frazzled. Everybody has something about them that you can compliment. Why would you start a conversation in a store aisle? Well, if you see somebody in line with a Boeing jacket and you happen to want to work at Boeing, why not? I'm not suggesting that you pursue a conversation with every stranger that you meet, but I do want you to be ready to strike one up if you run into someone who might help you land a job or someone who could become a client one day. And the only way you're going to figure that out is to ask people questions and dare to suck. You have to be willing to take risks and remind yourself that you won't lose anything important to you if the other person isn't interested in talking. Asking questions is hard to strategize in advance, so just think of the places that you're likely to run into people at, and then think of questions that fit those situations. Like in a group meeting, you could ask, is this your first time here? Or how did you get started in this industry? And in other places, it may be more appropriate to ask if someone lives in the area or what they like to do as a hobby. Just use your environment and what you observe about the person to steer your questions. And be sure to ask them questions that get them talking about themselves, and show them you're listening by giving them verbal cues like saying uh-huh or ah, and nodding your head, smiling, or raising your eyebrows just a little bit. Please just don't glance around the room while they're talking. Don't fidget. Don't look at your phone. This means employing active listening, which is crucial because people need to be heard. Become comfortable with your own silence by practicing listening to other people without interjecting. You aren't looking to just be quiet. You also need to avoid thinking about what you'll say next. You'll miss valuable information about the other person when you do that. Circling back to your personal elevator pitch, it'll help guide how the other person perceives you from the get-go. Eventually, they're going to ask some form of, what do you do for a living? It's still the dominant conversation opener among strangers in the United States and Canada, even though it's considered rude in other countries. And please don't give them a title or immediately blurt that you're looking for work. Titles are risky because everybody has their own impression of what a title means, and it may not be pleasant or complimentary. It also might not fit what you actually do or what you want to be doing, but now you're pigeonholed in their minds. Blurting that you're looking for work before someone connects with you makes them uncomfortable. You don't want to make people uncomfortable. Just use your elevator pitch instead to simply illustrate what you're good at so they can visualize how you might benefit them or someone they know. Start painting a picture of you that engages them and helps them connect and want to help you out. Later, you can tell them that you happen to be looking for work, unless they say something that shows they have a need you can fill, and then you can tell them how you can solve their problem because you ask questions and you listen to their answers. I'll give you a couple of examples. Say a person I just met asked me, what do you do? In my past career, I would have responded to give context. Have you ever had a phone or a computer crash and you thought you lost everything on it? And they'll probably respond with either yes or no. I would explain my action then. Well, I help people recover as much of their data as possible and save it in a format they can use it in. Then I give the result. I once worked with a nonprofit whose volunteer threw their laptop into a river rather than return it. They'd been looking at things they shouldn't have been on the internet. The nonprofit needed their data, though, so they hired a diver to retrieve it, and we recovered about 80% of their information. Or, if I asked the right questions in advance and I knew they had something to do with the law, I would have given a different context. Have you ever been involved in a discovery request where you were asked for electronic data, or someone asked you, and there was so much of it you felt buried? And they'd respond, and I'd explain my action in this way. Well, I help attorneys and companies find electronic data on all kinds of devices, collect it in a way that preserves its original state, and then make sense of it using analytics to find relevant information. Then I format it for hosting online so they can search, review, and use it in their case. And then I give them the result. I once worked on a case with over 30 million digital records, terabytes of data stored in 150 databases. I located relevant records, categorized them, and reported on them so a jury of lay people could visualize and understand the information. And based on reading this person, I might have given a different context instead. I might have asked, you've seen statistics and models on the news or the internet, right? And most people would say yes. So I'd reply with this action. I take enormous amounts of information and pull it together into a factual story that makes predictions or describes patterns and trends. Then I would add a result like, I once helped a company that serves the military by sourcing data on every base in the country for every branch and compiling it into summary reports for its executives so they could make decisions on how to spend their marketing budget. These are all examples that show why multiple scripts and thinking of different scenarios is so important. The responses are all different, but they're based on similar skills and experience, and they're tailored to the person that I'm talking to. And I'll know how to tailor them if I ask good questions and really listen to their responses. And what if I'm hit with a question before I've had a chance to do that? Well, I can wing it based on my impression of the person and where we're having the conversation if I've practiced my scripts. The script I'm the most comfortable with is probably the one that's going to come to mind, but at least I'll have something that I'm comfortable with talking about myself to say. So good job. You've got your personal elevator pitch down, but that isn't where you want the conversation to end. Your pitch is just the beginning. It's what got someone interested enough to talk to you more, but now what? At the end of the day, see how I did that? Your goal is to have the other person walk away feeling better for having talked to you. They'll remember you fondly if you take the time to make a connection with them. So along with your scripts, I mentioned rehearsing active listening. And this uses paraphrasing, acknowledgement, and inquiry, which basically means repeating what the other person said by rephrasing it to show them that you understood. And try your best to use the last word or phrase that you heard them say. It's something that a hostage negotiator speaking in one of my classes recommended. And then put what they said in your own words, something like, it sounds like you're, and then ask them a question. Think of it as playing catch with words. For example, if one of you just told me that you have a difficult time talking to strangers because you feel like they're silently judging you, I'd respond by paraphrasing. Talking to strangers is tough when it feels like people are judging you. And then I'd give you acknowledgement. It sounds like you're really uncomfortable around people you don't know. I understand that because I am too. And note that I wouldn't say that if it wasn't true. So find something true to say. And then I'd ask, is there anything that helps you when you're talking to somebody who might be judging you? Asking people to tell you about their experiences makes them feel important and helpful, and that connects them to you. Ask about challenges they're facing or challenges they've faced, and definitely ask them for advice. People love to talk about themselves and their own experiences. And this is also how you're going to hear where you might fit into their world or the world of someone they know. Oh, your brother works at Intel? I'm fascinated by that company. I would love to learn more about it. What does he do there? And this is also one way the right side of your list comes in handy. If you've already thought about the things you need to work on more, you'll be more likely to notice when somebody says that they do that thing for a living or as a hobby or they're retired from doing it. And the best way to ask for advice is when you have a genuine need for it. Your engagement is going to fuel theirs. And as the conversation progresses, try to use the person's name as often as possible, but not so much that it becomes creepy. Also, watch to see if they react negatively when you say their name the first time, because some people don't like hearing their name, so stop if that seems to be the case. But most people like hearing their name, and it makes them feel connected to the person saying it. And remember, keep them talking about themselves. Studies show that people feel more rewarded talking about themselves than they do with money, food, or sex. This is why social media has done so well. Don't just listen to what they say, though, and nod your head. Practice also giving honest feedback, compliments, and asking for advice. This will show the other person that you value them and that you want, and they'll want to engage in more conversation with you. Asking open-ended questions, ones that bond people fastest to you, and especially ones that relate to challenges that they face or that they've faced. Because humans gravitate to others who are like them, watch for chances to draw honest similarities and ask questions to help find those similarities. Don't claim something that isn't true, but if you practice, you'll find it's easier than you think to find a similarity with just about anyone. And even something a family member or a close friend shares with them can be a similarity. And claim that. They're kidding. My sister loves underwater basket weaving too. Practice using mimicry of somebody's speech and behavior in a respectful way. It helps tremendously, and there are many, many TED Talks on how to do this. If done well, studies show that people will find you more likable and be eager to work with you or help connect you to people who are looking for somebody like you. And then closing the conversation. That's really important. Hopefully you have a rock solid reason from your conversation to ask for their contact information and offer to follow up, which is exactly what you're going to do if that happened. But what if it didn't? Aim for something concrete, like it was great to meet you. I appreciate that you took the time to talk so I could get to know you a bit. Are you available for a call or for coffee next week? And if they say they need to look at their schedule, then respond with something like, great, here's my email address or phone number. Can I put yours in my phone so I can let you know when I'm available too? You'll find out pretty quickly how they felt about your conversation. And it's okay if you don't get their information, they may still contact you. But even if they don't, you've gotten some real life practice and you'll be even stronger when it counts. If you did get their information but didn't think to set up a follow-up timeline, wait at least a day, but never more than 3 to contact them and let them know you enjoyed meeting them and you want to follow up and set a time to get together and talk more about whatever it is that you recall talking about with them. You can also briefly mention how you can help them based on your conversation, or if you'd appreciate asking their opinion on something, because people love advice. Ask for a good day and time when they can talk more. And if you don't hear back within a week, reach out. You can say, I've been so busy, I'm sure you are too, but I'd still like to, and reiterate what you said before. If there's still no reply, I would let it go. 3 unwanted contacts feels like stalking to most people. If you do keep a connection with them, leave each subsequent conversation with an action item and define when and how you'll follow up on it. And at some point, when it seems natural, ask them to connect with you on LinkedIn, assuming that you have one. And always, always thank people for their time. Follow through on what you promise. And if you can't for some reason, contact them well in advance of when you were due to follow up with them and let them know that you'll be delayed. Be sure to apologize and let them know when you'll be finished. Don't miss that second timeline, and please don't make being late a habit. This all has to do with stranger conversations. But what about an interview? Well, the person you'll be talking to is a stranger, that's true, but you generally have the advantage of knowing who you'll be talking to in advance. People can tell when you've Google stalked them if you memorized and repeat their exact information, so avoid doing that. Do learn more about them by looking them up and using that information to practice the questions you'll ask, and then you can bring it out in natural conversation and mold your questions to connect with possible similarities. The list that you made is more than an elevator pitch. It's interview gold also. You can use the left side of your list to practice answers to name your biggest strengths or tell me about a time when you, and rehearsing stories behind what you listed so you'll recall them when you're asked. Use the right side of your list to practice answering name your biggest weakness. Come up with why what you need to work on is important so you can say one of my biggest weaknesses is blank. Although I'm okay at it, I know a little bit about it. I'm working on improving that because, and you can explain to them why learning more about a skill that you kind of have but need to develop a little bit more is important, and they'll be able to envision that in their minds. It won't seem like as much of a weakness. Another way that your elevator pitch works in interviews is that it prepares you for the competency questions that most interviewers ask. If you review your scripts before an interview, you can tailor them to the skills required for the position and rehearse beforehand using the skills or experience you have that fits in. Interviewers also look for context, action, and result when they ask you to talk about your abilities, skills, or experience. And guess what lays those out? Your elevator pitch scripts. They may not perfectly suit every job you apply for or everything you're asked about in an interview, but they'll empower your memory and your ability to recall and talk about yourself conversationally, and that never hurts. So here's how having practiced my elevator pitch scripts worked for me. I had a plumbing emergency, and the company that I hired experienced numerous problems while on our job. What they ultimately billed me didn't match the bid. There were supplies that weren't in on time. There were people who weren't here when they were supposed to be. And there was just a number of back and forth things that were really problematic for getting water back to my household, which is a pretty crucial thing to have. So I called to ask the owner what was happening. I didn't call to complain or put him on the spot. It just said, it seems like there's a lot going on with our project, and I'm wondering if there's anything I could be doing to help things go more smoothly. And I want to note that being kind to people and asking what you can do for them, even if you're having trouble with them or their service, and even if you're mad at them, is a huge relief to them, and they'll appreciate it. They'll want to help you a little bit more, especially when they work in an industry where people generally feel free to unload on them, like what we were talking about earlier. Anyone who's worked in the service industry knows what I mean about this. I remember it well from years of restaurant work and tech support work, and I personally think that working in a service field should be required for high school graduation. It teaches people empathy. So after asking him that question, I listened to his exasperated reply and heard that he was desperate to fix their technology problems that led to every issue that we had on our project, but he hadn't found a solution yet. In the interim, their team was struggling with a system that they already paid for, and it was costing them referrals and money in refunds to unhappy clients. So I empathized and said, I've been in the technology industry before. I've seen tons of problems cause heartaches and struggles for many companies that I'd worked with. And I asked him what solutions he's been looking at. He replied that every solution they'd seen so far was either more expensive than he could justify or more technical than he thought his crew could manage while still doing their jobs. And this is exactly what I'd been practicing for. Since I knew what I could do and what I was capable of learning to do, it was easier for me to think of how I could help him and explain to him the experience I have with solving technical problems. So I offered to take a look at the solution he uses now and the new ones he's considering, and to connect with him and his crew to find out what their needs are and put together a more affordable and user-friendly plan of action. And this was one of the most terrifying offers I think I've ever made because it connected to me personally. I've offered to help many people in my career, but it was always using a product or service that I worked with and not just something that I would tackle by myself. He said he would love to save money and have something that his team could use because none of them were very technical. So I asked if I could follow up with him in a day or so to give him time to think about the idea, and he said yes. So I followed up when I said I would, and in the interim, I got my water back. After many conversations back and forth, he and his partner decided to take a chance and let me take a look at their current and prospective systems and talk to their crew members. The solution they had and the ones that they were looking at were way more than a company of their size needed. It was confusing and far too multi-layered because they were using fleet software meant for companies of more than 100 people. And I recommended focusing on the few problems they needed to solve based on my conversations with them and with their crew, using solutions that work together rather than trying to find one solution that does everything. The one-stop shopping solutions were meant to serve big companies with departments that each manage a piece of the solution and not one person managing the entire thing. So they had one or two people trying to manage it all, and that was next to impossible. The problem wasn't that they weren't technically capable, they were trying to accomplish something that even technically capable people can't do by themselves. And this not only saved face for all of them because they were all feeling beaten down from their tech experience, but it also empowered them to breathe a little bit and know their problems could be solved. So the partners decided to hire me as a contractor to help with their scheduling, team communication, and bid billing problems, and to design a website that's more user friendly than the one that they had before. And I never would have had that chance if I hadn't taken the risk of talking to someone, asking questions, listening to their answers, empathizing with their problem, and then telling them how I could help them and following up. Oh, excuse me. I hope that that experience gives you all motivation to work on your own scripts because I know how hard it is with everything that we have going on in our lives, especially right now. And it can make a huge difference, though. So I really hope that you try to do it. And please, please feel free to drop me a line if I can help you with your scripts or really in any way. And thank you all for taking the time to listen. I hope that you and your loved ones remain well.
Thank you, Ronnda. That was amazing. That was incredibly educational and incredibly relevant to everything we're going through right now. So that's really amazing. I really appreciate that talk. I think we probably have some questions in the audience, the attendees, for you. So if we could take the next 10 minutes to answer some questions, that would be awesome. Did I see a hand go up? Eldon, did you raise your hand? Looked like you might have had a question there.
Oh no, that was just sign language as a applause.
Oh, great.
Since I'm muted.
No worries. If anybody has any questions, now is a great time. Anything related to the elevator pitch or about her story in general, we would love to hear those questions. I personally wanted to say that how relevant, and you brought it up as well, but relevant this is to interviewing. Even a virtual world, everything that you mentioned in terms of active listening, acknowledgement, how to monitor your nervousness. And I'm somebody who kind of fidgets a lot, so that's something that I always have to work on myself when I'm talking to somebody face to face. But it's all really relevant to not only the elevator pitch but the interview process as well. So that's incredibly important.
Well, it helps keep you too, I think, from having to watch your resume the whole time you're talking to someone interviewing you. I don't know about all of you, but I have this habit of one screen has my resume, other screen has information about the company. And I think they can tell I'm not engaged with them. Like, hopefully you all didn't feel like I wasn't engaged with you while I was talking, but trying to follow notes, it makes it really hard, and you can't make eye contact when you're on video. So it is hard to make people feel like you're connecting to them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, I that's something that I've seen, several graduates kind of struggle with when it comes to the interview process, especially virtual. How do you keep them engaged when you're not in the same room, when there's all these distractions around you? When you're looking at two screens at once, it's definitely a skill to be practiced. I had a question about the proposal you wrote for this company. How much, so you wrote your initial proposal to them. How much kind of back and forth negotiating was there from that point to your final decision for the website?
There wasn't a ton of it, just because they were really wanting to get it done. They had a short time frame where the software that they were using, the solution that they were using, was due for renewal real soon. It was due to start at, I think, January 1. It flips over and renew, and if you don't give them 30 days notice to cancel, you're stuck. So they were looking at getting charged for a pretty expensive solution fairly quickly, and they were wanting to get something going fast. There were a lot of back and forth conversations. I shadowed their crew a good deal to kind of listen to what their issues were with the solution that they had. They used an app from their smartphones, and a lot of them felt like it was really unwieldy. They had a hard time getting it to respond when they needed it to, and there were other ways that could be tackled without them having to monkey with tech while they're trying to do their jobs. So
Gotcha.
it's a lot of back and forth on that. But as far as making my proposal to them, I'd already had so many conversations with them by that point that really it was just them looking at numbers and going, okay, this is not only way more affordable, but this is also going to be a lot easier for us to use and for our crew to use. So let's give it a shot.
Awesome. That's excellent. Looks like Brett had a question in the chat. Are you familiar with Toastmasters, and what are your thoughts on Toastmasters?
I've heard of Toastmasters. I haven't personally taken part in it, but my mother's been a realtor for 45 years, and she swears by Toastmasters. It's part of what helped her be able to sit in front of clients and give them a pitch on listing their house with her. So I know Toastmasters has helped people in the professional world to be able to be more confident when they're speaking to people.
Because it's an educational organization, correct? On helping people with public speaking. Is that?
I feel like it's more of a professional networking company, but I'm not an expert in it by any means. I'm sure Googling it would come up with some good information on it.
Yeah.
That's always my go-to, Google it.
Yeah. Google's our best friend here. Jason Dunn asks, how do you think your education or background has impacted your elevator pitch and how you approach it?
Education, not so much, because I'm weak on the education front. So my background, definitely, just because I worked with so many sales folks. And again, I have to apologize to every last one of them, the snarky things that I thought about the way that they prepped for the work that they did when I was a technologist. I take all of them back. I mean, really, I could not feel comfortable having made that pitch to the company that I did unless I had that background and experience of being in sales and watching those sales folks pick up the phone and say the same script over and over again cold to people that they'd never met before. And it was that kind of a thing that they did that gelled the value of the product that they were selling in their minds. Not one of them knew how to work the software that we used. Not one of them. But because they had talking points and they spoke those points over and over and over again, it kind of gelled that in their memories and made it easier for them to recall when they were live in conversations with people. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I mean, that seems. Jason, do you have any follow-up on that? Oh, he says yes, thank you. I had a question about the two-sided list. You brought it up in the beginning. Could you remind us about the two sides of the left and right side of your
So the left side of the list are the skills that I have that I know I can do well,
Mhm.
right? The ones that are my star skills that I want to highlight when I'm talking to people. And then the right side of the list are skills that I might have dipped my toes into, but I don't understand them fully. I don't feel as strong in them, because there's always going to be a time when you can either use that information to ask people for their advice or their encouragement or their coaching, or you can use that information when you're asked the dreaded, what's your weakness? Because you're going to be asked that question. And I'm telling you, recruiters know when you try to craft a weakness that sounds like a skill. They smell that, they don't like it. You don't try to hide a skill by saying it's a weakness. They get that. So if you can genuinely respond with something that you're weak at, but you kind of understand that it not only humanizes you to them, but it tells them that you're thinking about yourself and your skills and who you are, and you actively want to improve on those things. And if you can also tell them why you want to improve on those things, and you can connect it to the job that you're going to be doing if you get hired, even better.
Excellent, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, let's see. Does anybody else have any questions for Rhonda today?
Rhonda, that was a really good talk.
Thank you.
Now you mentioned Tech Talk or TED Talks are really good for some resources. Are there some other resources that you really like to use for creating your elevator pitch?
You know, honestly, no. And that's just selfishly because I have the background and experience with sales folks. But I would say there are so many awesome TED Talks out there about this exact kind of thing. I mean, if you enter crafting a sales pitch or even crafting an elevator pitch, you're going to come up with experts in the field who have great advice on this kind of thing. Same with body language. There's a lot of hostage negotiators out there who love to tell you how to read people's body language, and that's really valuable.
Looking at the FBI hostage situation, that'd be a good resource.
It really would.
That's just a joke.
It really would. In a way, you're kind of a hostage, aren't you?
Sometimes.
Especially in an interview, at least I feel like I am. Oh.
Okay, I think Forrest is frozen.
Forrest froze.
Yeah, it happened again.
My first screenshot.
Are you there, Forrest?
Oh.
All right.
All right.
Well, this happened last week too. Are there anybody else that has any questions?
I actually did have one more question.
Yeah.
Again, my name is Eldon. Thank you, Rhonda, again for your time today. My question is, moving forward, especially in this pandemic, I don't see myself getting trapped in an elevator with anytime soon, or stopping someone in the grocery store just because I want to get out of there as soon as possible. Yeah. So, do you have any suggestions as to how to virtually connect? Other than LinkedIn, which is pretty much the only way that I've been connecting with people in a professional sense.
There are a ton of meetups. Have you done meetups?
This is my first meetup.
Okay. So I think, and it's been a bit since I've been on that site, but I think if you search, you can find meetups of people with similar interests that you have or in an industry that you want to get into, and you join those meetups, and that's a great way to connect with people and just talk. Okay. So definitely look on the meetup site.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Another resource too maybe is to look into PCC. They don't just serve students. They also have various professional programs where you can connect with people and do things like this. Just meet all as a group and talk about job hunting or whatever it is that you're doing. I'll try to remember what that is. Forrest, did my LinkedIn get put up anywhere where people could see it?
Yeah, I added it to the chat earlier
Okay.
before I got kicked out. I'm not sure. It should still be in there.
My site from the Tech Academy is ronnda.info, RONNDA.info. Just message me from there and I'll send you a link to the community college that does those regular meetings, because that helps too to get connected to other people, and they know a lot of hiring folks too.
Cool. Thank you.
In fact, there's one technology group that's meeting right now that does a ton of stuff. I feel like I get 8 to 10 emails a day from them, so I'll connect you to that.
Cool. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Got a comment in the chat, not necessarily a question, but Brett says he thinks you should write a book because it sounds like you really know what you're talking about.
Oh, thank you,
Which
Brett.
I'd have to agree.
That's sweet. I appreciate that.
Oh, that's great.
You
Awesome.
you can start your own training, Rhonda.
Yeah.
Yeah, organization.
It's a lot of fun.
Awesome.
All right. Good stuff,
All right,
Rhonda. Well, thank
Thank
you.
you guys. Good luck, you guys. You'll do awesome. I know it.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you so much,
will.
Rhonda. You've been amazing.
Yeah. Have a good one. Bye.
All right.
Everybody take care and be well.
Yes, thank you.